Welcome to the first class of the course, Ocean 2, Further Introduction to Shin Buddhism in the West and Beyond. We are happy to have you as a member of this course. My name is Amida, and I'm a member of the steering committee for the class and will serve as your MC tonight. Allow me to introduce our instructor for this course, Reverend Dr. Kenneth Tanaka. Dr. Tanaka's bio was included in the course information, so I'm not going to repeat it here. Instead, I'd like to share a brief episode from his life, an episode that has relevance to tonight's topic. After moving to the United States at the age of 10 years old, with his American-born parents and entire family, he attended a Christian church belonging to the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. He respected the minister and liked the congregation, but he questioned how an omnipotent, omniscient, and loving God could have created a world with all the suffering that Ken saw in the world. However, at the age of 13, circumstances changed and led him to the Mountain View Buddhist temple in Northern California. There he felt much more comfortable with the Buddhist worldview that life is a bumpy road. Dr. Tanaka, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning here in Tokyo, Japan, and evening on the West Coast and on the Eastern US and Canada, and we have some people from Brazil. So this is really a miracle. You know, religious people talk about miracles. I really think, you know, this is a miracle that all of us can gather like this for an event to study Buddhism. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen and okay. All right, I hope you can all see this. So the name of the course, you are all aware. This statue is from the school, the university that I taught for the last 20 years, Musashino University in Tokyo. At the front gate stands the statue of Shinran. This is depicting him going back to Kyoto at the age of 61. I really like this statue. It shows him, you know, very determined, ready to go back to Kyoto to do his writings, and it always gave me a lot of energy and a desire to do my best for that day. So the course has three themes: meaning in our lives. And today, the focus is on being born a human being. And then we have a parable, and today's parable has to do with boarding the ship. And then we talk about Shinran, and today we talk about his birth and his early years. Now, needless to say, Shin Buddhism is a shortened form of Jodo Shinshu, the school of the true Pure Land way. And it's also referred to, this school of Buddhism is referred to as Shinshu, meaning the true school. I know that this is something, you know, not new for many of you, but there are some new people here, and I wanted to touch the basics. Okay, so I want to begin by kind of focusing on Shin Buddhism, what it is and how it's perceived. And there are three images that I wanted to share with you. And one is an anecdote that happened a number of years ago at a 50th anniversary of the Zen Center in San Francisco, held at the University of California, Berkeley. And I've told the story before, and if you heard it before, just disregard. So I sat next to a Zen person, and an American Zen person, and she had the robes on, and I introduced myself as Ken Tanaka of the Jodo Shinshu school. And she came back and said, "Oh, so you're the Christian Buddhist." And, well, it didn't make me happy. I was little, and then in my mind, I said to myself, "Oh my God," though I didn't say that. It was, I know that there's a perception, but someone told that to me to my face. And I was going to explain why that is not the case, but the event started and I lost the chance to really explain to her. So that's one image. Another image is that represented by this Heinz Becker, a German scholar of Buddhism. And he wrote in one of his writings, Amidism takes the idea of the Buddha, in a way, twists them into their opposite. The most radical spokesman for this approach is Shinran Shonin. And so here is almost a perception that Shin Buddhism is an aberration. It departs from basic Buddhism, while he really praises Zen Buddhism. So we're not sure what he doesn't write as to what he meant by turning things into opposite or twist them into their opposite, probably referring to things like other power as opposed to self-power. Okay, that's the second one. The third perception by D.T. Suzuki, whom many of you know, he's the eminent teacher who introduced Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, especially Zen Buddhism. But he writes in a book called Buddha of Infinite Light, which is on Shin Buddhism. He writes, the Japanese may not have offered very many original ideas to the world thought or world culture, but in Shin, we find a major contribution that the Japanese can make to the world and to all other Buddhist schools. So that's quite a praise. And so we have these diverse views on Shin Buddhism, some of which you are also aware of. Now, Shin Buddhism is part of Buddhism. And so I want to talk a bit about Buddhism. Needless to say, Buddhism is one of the three largest world religions, the others being Christianity and Islam. It's the smallest in terms of number, with 500 million members, compared to Christianity has 2.3 billion members and 1.8 Muslims. So it's the smallest, but it is the oldest by 500 years older than Christianity and 1100 years older than Islam. Now, there are many religions that emanated out of Indian subcontinent, the others being Hinduism and Jainism. But Buddhism is the only one of them that became a world religion. And the reason being, I believe, has to do with its adaptability to different cultures, but also its egalitarian message, the teaching of equality, which has been the reason why many former untouchables in India, they're called Dalits or Harijans, they have turned and taken on Buddhism as their religion because of their teaching of equality. So they're, officially India says they're only about 1% of their people are Buddhist, but the number is probably much higher. And according to some Indian Buddhists that I have met recently, and I've given talks to them on their internet, and there are probably, they claim 40 million Buddhists in India. Maybe a little high, but I think it's quite up there. The reason is the teaching of equality and egalitarian message. Now, in terms of the development of Buddhism, I would like anyone who doesn't know to do readings on their own. And so I won't, of course, not spend much time, but by the way, on your outline, and as I have here, I have readings throughout the outline. And then I have appropriate reading passages, mostly from my book, Jewels, and also from Ocean, which are available free online. And also a book by Professor Shigaraki. The passage, certain readings from that book, I will make it available online for you, which I have done here. A few pages of Shigaraki Sensei's book is available on our website. Okay, so development of Shin Buddhism here is of course part of Pure Land Buddhism, a larger branch. And Pure Land Buddhism is part of Mahayana Buddhism. And any words written in purple will not be in your outline. The outline that you got is still some, is a draft. And after this class is over, I will send you the finalized version. So unlike Professor Becker, who said, Shin Buddhism is more of an aberration, but Shin Buddhism is part of Pure Land and part of Mahayana Buddhism. Just like Zen Buddhism is part of Mahayana Buddhism. Actually, Zen and Pure Land, or Zen and Shin, they have a lot in common that a lot of people are not aware, and I hope to address that. Okay, so Buddhism in the West. Now, Buddhism developed eastward, northward, and to the eastward, yeah, to Southeast Asia, north up to China, but it never went over what I call the Western Wall. In the 2600-year history of Buddhism, Buddhism did not spread amongst the ordinary people in the West. But that began to change about 100 years ago, and especially since Second World War, especially since 1960, especially in America, in North America, Western Europe, and Australia and New Zealand. Now, one question that I often talk about, one question that I ask of audiences in Japan, where I often give talks in Japan about Buddhism in North America. And the question that I ask is, which city in the world has the largest number of Buddhist schools? Not people, schools. And the answer is Los Angeles, or Seattle, North America, Northern California, the Bay Area, or Chicago. But especially Los Angeles, there are more than 100 different schools of Buddhism living side by side, and that has never happened in the history of Buddhism. So now in the US, there are 3.3 million Buddhists, 1.7 nightstand Buddhists. Well, nightstand Buddhists are those who don't claim to be Buddhists, but they know a lot about Buddhism. They may meditate and they read a lot of books. And at nighttime, they read their books and they put it on their nightstand and get up next morning, try to remember what they read and try to meditate. So that's why it's a kind of a humorous term that was given by a Buddhist scholar, nightstand Buddhists. And there, according to one survey that was done a number of years ago, there are now equivalent to 25 million people in the US who were deeply influenced by Buddhism with regard to religion and spirituality. So if you put them all together, we're looking at about 35 million people in the US, which is 10% of the population, which is an enormous shift and change and development since by the time I was growing up in Northern California. And so there has been a significant growth of Buddhism, especially in North America and Western Europe. Now, one of the reasons for the growth of Buddhism has to do with the fact that it is a religion of awakening, not a religion simply of belief. And needless to say, Buddha means someone who was awakened one, and one who came to see true reality. And through cultivating themselves, practicing and to learning and to seeing things according to the wisdom that Buddhism talks about. Or in other words, seeing reality, which is a bit different from a religion of belief, which Professor Wilfred Cantwell Smith in his book, Faith and Belief, talks about. And this is not in your outline, which will be in your outline, as I said earlier. So belief is a holding of certain ideas, and intellect's translation, even reduction of transcendence into an ostensible terms. This is how he defined it. So belief is more in your head. Awakening is a total being through a transformation and awareness of how you perceive life, both outside and inward. Now, here, according to Wade Clark Roof, Professor Roof, he speaks of key words that define traditional religion, which I would equate with religion of belief, with spirituality. Spirituality, which is more, it's more closer to Buddhism as it is represented in the West. So if you look at these key terms, traditional religion represented by God, repentance, sin, faith, morals, okay? But spirituality, connectedness, unity, peace, harmony, centeredness. Which of these two sets of definitions apply more to the way Buddhism is presented in the West today? And obviously, it's the spirituality part, connectedness, interdependence, centeredness. So that is something that that I think the contemporary people are looking for, and more people are finding that form of religion more, they're more attracted to that kind of religiosity. So actually, Albert Einstein 100 years ago spoke of a need in the future for what he calls a cosmic religion. And he talks about the history of religion, how he went from religion of fear to moral religion. And now he said, we need a cosmic religion. And what is cosmic religion? And one definition is here as it offers a meaningful unity of the natural and the spiritual. So the natural is a realm that science deals with, the natural world. And he feels that religion has to be able to integrate the two and not have conflict between the natural world and the spiritual world. And he says, if any religion can do that in a deal with modern science, it would be Buddhism. Now, he also recognized that there are people in other traditions like Francis of Assisi and others in the Western traditions who represent cosmic religion. But as a religion, as a large religion, he specifically noted Buddhism as one that represents cosmic religion, is something that we need in the future. Okay, so what I wish to talk about now is this diagram that I have used in my classes, and it has to do with the horizontal and the vertical dimensions. And so the horizontal dimension is here as represented. So everyday world of family, friends, schools, work, etc. It's the objective dimension that we all inhabit. We all live on this plane. So it's what happens to us. And here I have also noted that it's a bumpy road. The life is really a bumpy road. And that's something that I probably don't need to tell you, because all of us, if you lived even 20 years, that you find that life is not smooth. It's up and down. And that's why it's depicted with this wavy line up and down, up and down, up and down. And this also entails difficulties. Difficulties are inevitable. Difficulties are inevitable, and that's represented by this wave. However, that is for those of us who are involved in spirituality, be it Christianity, Islam, or Buddhism, or any other legitimate religions, that we have, there is a vertical dimension. And so this is the religious and the mental dimension. And it's subjective in nature. It's how we feel, how we experience. And this is where religion, this is what religion emphasizes, needless to say. And I have down here Butsudo. Butsudo means Buddhist path. In Japanese, Buddhism is called Bukkyo, means Buddhist teaching. But actuality, many people prefer Buddhist path, Butsudo instead of Bukkyo. Do is represented, it means path or practically practice. And so you have it in Judo, Kendo. And so Buddhism is not so much a religion of belief, but it's a path that one walks by practicing through meditation, through ethical conduct, and most importantly, gaining wisdom, true wisdom. So on this, you have the vertical. So we start up at this level. This is the secular level. Ordinary people without any kind of teachings will be at this level. And so for the Buddhists, one would walk this path and ultimately to attain the goal, which is to become awakened, to reach Buddhahood. And so now I spoke of religion of awakening, and Buddhism is exactly that. Through wisdom, compassion, ideas, thoughts, we take on and learn teachings that will lead us to greater awakening. And so let me just now go to, before that, I should, I should share this phrase, which I love. Difficulties are inevitable on the horizontal plane, but suffering is optional. And the suffering takes place on the subjective level. Suffering is a mental state. Difficulties are objective situation. And I read this in of all places, in a public toilet somewhere in Central California. And I had my awakening moment, as was in a public toilet. And there was a writing on the wall. It says, difficulties are inevitable, but suffering is optional. So suffering is, for a Buddha at this level, is very minimal. If there's any suffering by a Buddha and a fully awakened person, it's suffering due to the fact that other people are suffering. So in other words, Buddha, someone who has reached that level, is without the suffering. Most of us are on a lower level, but we can reach a higher level through walking the path. Okay, so I want to share this cartoon that I love. As you know, my Jewels book, one of the things that I'm proud of in that book is the element of humor. I've actually wanted to write a book all on Buddhist humor, but I just didn't have enough to do a whole book, but was able to incorporate that in a book that is very basic. And by the way, it's not only for youth, but if you notice the subtitle, I say for young at heart. So I'm sure that all of you are young at heart. Now, here is a cartoon and here's this guy hanging on a cliff, and the cliff is 100 yards down or 100 meters down. So, if it's 100 meters down, you want to cling really tight. But, he's running out of strength. And then he sees a Buddha appear and says, "Oh, Buddha, save me, please save me." And then next caption says, "I will," said the Buddha, "let go." Okay. But if you notice that the bottom of the cliff is not 100 yards or 100 meters down, but it's only 1 meter down. So this is the essence of part of what Buddhism teaches. Sometimes we get so attached to certain ideas, how things ought to be, and what a terrible thing it is, and it's so grave and so outrageous that this can't happen, and you get all upset about it. But from a Buddha's perspective, from the enlightened one's perspective, hey, it's no big deal, not a big deal. And so I was thinking of a couple of anecdotes or examples. Olympics is taking place right now. And if you're in Japan, you're rooting for an ice skater named Hanyu Yuzuru, who had won 2 gold, and he was going for his 3rd. And then, of course, if you're an American, or you're probably rooting for Nathan Chen. And so I know in Japan, when Hanyu Yuzuru did not fare well, many people were like this cliff-hanging man on the left-hand side. "Oh, so terrible," and because they had so high hopes, and they wanted him to win, and so he would. And of course, many people were attached to the fact that he's Japanese, and we're Japanese, and so Japan has to win, and so they were anxious about it. And when he didn't do so well, many of them were pretty down. And I can understand that, because we all have that kind of attachment for our favorite ones. And but from the Buddhist perspective, for a Buddha, one would not be so attached to one person winning over the another person. And for the Buddha, the cliff is only 1 yard down. The important thing is the sportsmanship, and whoever wins, whatever nationality, that's fine. And that would be the attitude. Then you can enjoy. Having said that, I know myself that I have my favorites, and when they don't do well, you get down and you get irritated. But Buddhism is saying, let go, attachment. One other example, which is a kind of a little bit of touchy issue, which is, I need to tread this very carefully, has to do with the pandemic. And I know that pandemic has been devastating for a lot of people, especially if you have lost a loved one. And I know, but I'm speaking more for myself, and probably representing most of you who may have had, a really tragedy by losing someone in your family. But most of all, even in the US, where you have 900,000 people dying, most people are still alive. And in Japan, it's much better. So speaking as a person who have not been devastated by the pandemic, this cliff man hanging on a cliff, he would be like someone, say, in March of 2020, when the pandemic started. He, for example, would have reacted to the pandemic coming on and the lockdown, and said, "Why is this happening to me? Life should go smooth." But he doesn't understand the Buddhist teaching of impermanence. Impermanence does not mean that there's a standard way of how things are. Things are always changing. See, we have a notion that standard way, the normal way, is for things not to happen badly, that things should be going smooth. So when the pandemic hit, this person could not respond to the change. And so inability to respond to the change made him very upset and made him, unhappy, blaming the world, blaming God, Buddha, whatever, because he is attached to the notion that things have to go smoothly, things should not change, etc., etc. So, but from a Buddhist standpoint, yes, it is not a good situation, but life is change, and so need to accommodate, adjust to the change, and one thing about change is that when things are not going well now, one of the messages is that things will get well, things will change and get better. So inability to deal with this, the pandemic, for this man had to do with inability to really see truth or reality or how things are. So one would want to, by understanding, respond to what the scientists have to say, and to seeing things, seeing reality as they are, and to respond to that. Okay, so just two examples. One on the pandemic is difficult to deal with, but I think we can all relate to what I'm saying here. And please, this cartoon has helped me in many ways. Whenever I feel like I'm hanging on a cliff that's 100 yards above the ground, and kind of look at yourself from a Buddhist perspective and say, hey, you're not hanging on a cliff 100 meters above. It's only 1 meter above the ground. And it's helped me to respond in a more mild way, in a more positive way, and not to suffer. So difficulties are inevitable, but whether you suffer or not on a vertical plane, it is up to you. And so why Buddhism? And before I close the first talk, the reason why I became a Buddhist, or Buddhism felt comfortable for me at the age of 13, was that, and one of the reasons was the voluntary nature of Buddhism. I like the Buddha's call in Pali, it's ehi passiko, come here and see. Passiko, by the way, is probably cognate, has English, common English root, or perceive. So come here, ehi, and perceive. So it's not that you have to adopt the teachings. You must, otherwise you won't be saved. It's much more voluntary, and it's always been the Buddhist attitude, which I admire and appreciate. And Shinran, when he had his disciples come to him, traveling all the way from Tokyo to Kyoto, and asking him, whether he had another teaching that he hadn't told them. And then he said, he takes the time to explain, no, whatever I know, whatever I feel, I have shared with you, and it's the Nembutsu teaching. And then he goes on to say, whether you accept this teaching or not, it's your own decision. So the personal decision, that is something that I value in Buddhism. Okay, and finally, as was mentioned in the introduction, I did attend a Christian church for a while, and that particular church was very conservative, and probably very kind of set in their views. But I had difficulty with this dilemma, which is called theodicy, or the traditional theodicy, in which especially the Christians try to respond to the question as to why a loving God, omnipotent, omniscient God created the world, but there is so much suffering, so much difficulties, from the pandemic to wars and to difficulties in the families and young people getting ill. There are just too many sufferings for me to accept and appreciate the fact that God had created the world, and there's so much suffering. But whereas Buddhism does not take that position, hey, this is the world. We find ourselves the way in this world, and this is the way things are, which is the horizontal level that I talked about. So now it's up to me to cultivate myself on the vertical plane to better deal with what is on the horizontal. So that concludes my talk one. And so Reverend Anita.
Ken, I think you need to.
I think
Yes,
it's working. Okay, very good. I've been unmuted. Thank you. We'll now have about 10 to 15 minutes for questions and comments on this first part of the discussion. Now, given the size of our large class, please indicate you'd like to speak by either raising your hand physically or with the Zoom sign feature at the very bottom where it says reactions. If you click on the reactions, there'll be a little hand. You can do it that way. When Dr. Tanaka acknowledges you,
Ken,
Anita, you gotta unmute.
Ken, you have to make her a co-host also.
Oh, I thought I did.
well, yeah, it's kicked out. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
You
So,
can hear. Okay, which part shall I start from?
okay. No, I don't know, but I think, okay, just let's just anyone wishing to ask questions, indicate by the icon or raise your hand, and or just speak up, because we have so many 4 different screens. And okay,
You can raise your hand by going to reactions in the
Yeah.
bottom of your screen.
Yeah.
If you push on reactions, there will be a key raise hand in the bottom of it.
okay, maybe people are
Or you can put a question in the chat box.
Fumi,
yeah, well, the chat, okay, we can do that. Well,
Oh,
maybe
Fumi raised her hand.
my talk was so lucid
Ken.
that you understood everything and you have nothing, no questions, which is great, which will be great. So you are now all enlightened.
Ken, Fumi has a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Just speak. Sumi? Oh,
Fumi, you have to unmute yourself.
unmute yourself. If you're asking the question, you gotta unmute yourself. Where is she?
she is right on top in the left.
Well, Fumi, you gotta, if you have a question, please unmute yourself and just ask. Maybe they cannot unmute. I hope they can.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize it
There you
said.
go.
Fuji.
Okay,
My name's Barbara. No, it's not
What-
really a
what-
question, except in the readings. In the readings on the development of Buddhism, you list Jewel's page 34 to 51, Life of the Buddha, and then also the same pages for the development of Buddhism. And so I'm just assuming that it should go on to 52 to 72. I just wanted to kind
yeah.
of point that out
yeah,
because
okay,
it was
I-
printed, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some errors, but yeah. In the Jewel's book, chapter 2 is about Buddhist development in Asia. And then chapter 4 is development in the US.
Mhm.
Yes. but the history of Buddhism you can find in many other books. So I would like all of you to just read up on the basics, both the history part of it and the doctrine part of it. But you know, whatever readings you could do will really help to you know, better understand what I have to say about Shin Buddhism. Okay,
Barbara?
Barbara.
Excuse me, Barbara, could I get your last name?
It's
Brennan.
Brennan.
Brennan?
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
Mary, do you have a question?
Well, it's actually just a comment basically with respect to your quotation about the most radical spokesperson for the approach of twisting the things into their opposites.
Yeah.
I think the most famous is Tanisho number 3.
Yeah.
Even the good person attains birth in the Pure Land, how much more so an evil person?
Yes.
And I think that that's the beauty of Shinran's teachings, because
Yeah.
we see things, you know, always on the normal way. But what he does is he phrases things in such a way that it really does make you look at it twice. And I think that even in the Meditation Sutra, you know, when you look at the 9 levels, you know, we like to think that we're striving for, you know, that uppermost level. But what Shinran is saying is that from the evil person, quotes, evil person, we work ourselves up to.
Yeah.
So it's, I think that that's really the beauty of Shinran's teachings.
Okay.
Causes you to really do introspection.
So the quote that Mary just cited has to do with the notion, the teaching that even a good person, people who abide by the rules can be saved, and how much more so the person, evil person, who cannot do that. And so, but you know, on this point, this gets to the heart of Shin Buddhism, which is coming earlier than I expected. So today I was focusing more on general Buddhism. But if you notice on the vertical plane, did you notice that the arrows were going on both up and down? And this is kind of an innovation. It's first time I'm sharing it in this way. That is that not only going up, you know, towards Buddhahood, but on externally, but the arrow is going downward, which represents internally the inability of ourselves to really go all the way up, you know, through our own effort. But the more actually that arrow is simultaneous, it goes up and down this way. The greater, higher level you go up, your inner insight about yourself should also develop as well.
Deeper.
So deeper, so higher and deeper. Thank you, Mary. Yeah, this is good. That's what's good about classes. You know, you get, you know, people contributing and you have new ways of thinking and articulating. So it's going, so anyway, so higher and deeper, higher and deeper. Whenever I say the word deeper, Mary, I'll remember you from now on. Yeah, and which is really important, because I think that, you know, contemporary people, we're always looking outward, and we're also only looking on the horizontal. But, you know, especially Buddhism helps us to turn inward and look within. And so without that, I don't think that we can actually go higher. Without going deeper, you cannot go higher. So it's a simultaneous process. And this is true with any true religion, you know. People who adhere to, say, morals and trying to be a good person without really reflecting on themselves that, you know, their imperfect self, they cannot really go very high. And so that's, you know, that's what is important about any true religion. Okay, good point. Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Murayama,
Okay.
I can. Thank you for your talk. I just wondered if you could comment on the development of religion in itself. In terms of, you made a point that Buddhism is the oldest religion, but there were other practices at that time, even before Buddhism got started. And then 500 years later, Christianity was born. And then, 1500 years later, you had Islam being born. But what is that phenomenon that occurs that have people looking for religion for something? I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Well, what phenomenon? I mean, this is a huge topic, what religion is, but I think it's just suffering, difficulties. So people have to deal with their difficulties. And I think in the early phases of religion of fear, more of so-called quote unquote primitive period, what people were concerned about war, famine, illness. So they try to deal with that. And then the moral religions had to deal with how to, how a society should function. So focus on, people trying to be moral and then get to and Buddhism has to do with the suffering on the existential level, existential suffering, dealing with old age, sickness, and death, and not getting what you want, and things of that nature. So essentially, religion has to do with dealing with difficulties and suffering. I will give a definition later by Paul Tillich, the eminent Protestant theologian, and he spoke of religion as being of ultimate concern that gives meaning to life, ultimate concern that allows for meaning in life. And so religion, to answer your question, is a response to the difficulties, but and it becomes for that person of ultimate concern, which then ultimately gives you a meaning of life, which is, gives you some understanding of, not so much why you're here, but indirectly, but something concrete in life, that this is the reason why I was born, or having found this, having realized this, it makes my life meaningful. And this is something, this is what I want all of you, if you haven't already experienced it, this is what all of you would like to feel to a greater extent. And this is what religion does. And so this is what we're aiming for. If we talk about, I mentioned religion of awakening, that's what we're talking about. Okay, I think time is up. So Reverend Anita, I'm gonna go on now. Okay, so.
Yes.
Okay, so. All right, talk 2 has to do with a parable, one of the 3 themes. And the parable of a drowning sailor, some of you have already heard this from, if you had listened to my talks, but in the ocean book, if you notice the central talk, central theme in that, or on the book cover, you have a man floating on the ocean. And this was a story that the one section of it where the drowning sailor or drowning man finds himself, being pulled under, but then he lets go and relaxes and lets his limbs out, and then lo and behold, he is uplifted by the ocean. So I heard this story when I was in high school back in Mountain View, California, from a guest speaker, and I believe it was Reverend Tetsuo Uno. And that story really sank in. And ever since I decided to make Buddhism my career, much later, I would say from around age 40, I began to develop this story, this anecdote or this analogy and develop into a parable. And so it's not, this story is not found in Japan. I looked everywhere and it's not from Japan. And so that one segment and that Reverend Uno told in his talk, gave in his talk, I have developed it. And the reason why I think a parable is important is because whenever we talk about Shin Buddhism, we only look at one segment of it or one of many segments. And unless we understand the total picture, it really doesn't make sense. For example, often we say, well, Shin Buddhism is a teaching of reciting the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. You recite the Nembutsu and you'll be saved. But that is just one segment, one slice of the story. But unless you look at the total picture, it doesn't quite make sense. And that is why I have developed this parable. And if you looked at in Shin Buddhism, there are the 7 masters from Nagarjuna and Vasubandhu in India to Chinese masters, Tanluan, Daocho and Shandao, and then Genshin and Honen in Japan. These are the 7 masters. But if you look at them, they were not Shin Buddhists or Pure Land Buddhists from the beginning. They didn't begin as, oh, I'm a Pure Land Buddhist, I'm going to do. No, they came later in life, all of them. Even Shinran. Shinran himself was a Tendai monk, and he, aspired for 20 years on Mount Hiei. And so in many ways, unless you look at the total picture, it's hard to comprehend what Shin is about. So phase 1 is today's focus, boarding the ship. A sailor boards a ship which departs from a port of a tropical island. After several hours on the high seas, the sailor is on the deck with 2 of his sailor buddies enjoying the magnificent sunset. So this is actually a much larger ship. It's at one part of it. And so this is the sailor gets on the ship and he's having a good time looking at the beautiful sunset. And so today we just talk about this. So what is the significance of boarding a ship? So boarding a ship represents our birth as human beings. So, as far as I can tell, you're all human beings and we share that in common. But from the Buddhist perspective, there is bad news, good news. Well, what's the bad news? Well, we're still in a cycle of birth and death. And many of us know the term samsara. Means that we're not enlightened yet. We have difficulties. Difficulties are inevitable. And so Buddhism often talks about difficulties, suffering, dukkha. The term dukkha is a Sanskrit term meaning suffering, pain, unsatisfactoriness, worry. Well, you understand, right? So we all usually use the word suffering. But why is birth suffering? The 8 kinds of suffering. The first one is birth, followed by aging and illness and death, not getting what you want, meeting up with people and situations that you don't like, or separating from situations that we love and people that we love. And then the 8th one has to do with being attached to the 5 elements of the experiential self, which is a little difficult to understand. So, but 5 skandhas, attachment to the 5 skandhas, essentially means attachment to our views and what we want, as we saw in that cartoon, the guy on a cliff. So birth is one of the sufferings, and it confounds people when they first encounter why birth is one of the 8 kinds of sufferings. And the reason is that birth brings you into an existence that is filled with not filled with, but where you experience illness and death and not getting what you want. So if you're not born, you won't experience that. So the aim of Buddhism is to transcend this samsara cycle of birth and death, whatever transcendence or liberation means. There is a humorous a story related to this. There was a very devout Buddhist medical examiner. Have you heard this one? This is a contribution by American Buddhism, I think. American Buddhism has made contribution in terms of humor. And I love this one. So this devout Buddhist examiner, medical examiner, he got fired. Why? Because on the medical record where he has to fill in the reason why this person died, every time he wrote the same thing over and over again. Different people, he wrote the same thing. What did he write? The cause of death, he wrote birth. You get it? Why did this person die? Well, because he was born. If you weren't born, you wouldn't die. Now, I don't mean to make make fun of this, but this is very, well, it's humorous, but it's very profound. That, and I hope that through this, you have a little understanding of why Buddhism says birth is one of the sufferings. But needless to say, there is a way out of this. That is a solution to it. That is the Buddhist teaching. Okay, that's the bad news. The good news is that it is rare to be born a human being. Being born a human being is an optimum state from which we can realize liberation or awakening. So the heavenly realms are better off in the sense that they have only pleasure. They have no suffering. But problem with that is that because they have no suffering, they don't really appreciate their pleasures. In the human realm, we have suffering and pleasure. Therefore, we can appreciate what pleasure is, and then more importantly, we have a desire to liberate ourselves, to overcome the suffering. So of the 6 realms, the heavenly realms, the human realm, the realm of the Titans or the Asuras, what's the 4th one? Animals. What's the 5th one? Hungry ghosts. And what's the 6th one? Hellish beings. So these are the 6 realms. We are in the realm of the human realm, and it's the best place from which we can liberate ourselves. But it's also rare to be born a human being. That's something that that this parable of the ocean turtle and the floating wood tells us. Have you heard this one? I'm sure that some of you have. The chance of us being born a human being is like that of a turtle living at the bottom of the ocean, and it is visually impaired, cannot see. Every 100 years, this turtle at the bottom of the ocean comes up to the surface of the ocean, and there floats by chance a piece of wood with a hole about a foot wide in diameter. And the chance of that turtle coming up to the surface every 100 years and he or it not being able to see comes up and pops its head in that little hole. That is a chance of any being being born a human being. Well, I don't know if you feel grateful that having known that parable, but I sometimes think that, maybe, rather than this kind of metaphor, we think about our ancestors, people who preceded us. The fact that we are here is a miracle. You go back only 10 generations ago. Well, we had 100,024 or 42 ancestors. If any one of them were missing, we wouldn't be here. If you go back 20 generation, that number goes up to over 1 million. And if you go up 30 generation, like in the billions. So the chance of us being here is such a miracle. Okay, so talking about being born a human being, and another aspect of this is that in terms of how the world began, Buddhism or the Buddha was not so concerned. He was concerned more with the vertical dimension, the subjective dimension. So he was not too concerned. And so Buddhism is able to accept whatever the science has to offer to us. So Dalai Lama did say something to the fact that when it comes to the matters related to things that the scientists can find out, we rely on them. So I would say that in this pandemic, if you're a true Buddhist, you wouldn't be questioning Dr. Fauci, people who are the experts. And I think that's something good about Buddhism, is that it knows its weakness, or it's not strong in how things are scientifically or objectively. And so this is one aspect of it. Okay, the other part has to do with the transmigration that I talked about. As you know, and I just earlier talked about the samsara, in which we are, in which there are 6 realms, from heavenly realms to the hellish beings. This is a worldview that was in existence when Buddha was alive, from Brahmanism or Hinduism. So that was a worldview. And Buddha simply adopted that. It worked with that. Just like anyone working with today, we work with the worldview that we have today. And it has certainly, been part of the Buddhist teachings. But the point that I wanted to make was that believing in the 6 realms is not mandatory to be a Buddhist. I personally do not literally believe that I was, some other being in the past. That is not central to the teaching. But, we can have it in the background as part of the tradition. Okay, so now I want to go to a Shinran's life. Now we don't have, okay, we're kind of running out of time. So, okay, one of the themes of today's talk was Shinran, and I wanted to mention briefly Shinran's birth and early life. He was born to a family of lower nobility. His last name was Hino, and his father Arinori and mother Kikonyo. We don't have much information about that, and this is one of the things. I mean, there are people who say mother passed away young when he was in his before he became ordained, like age 8, and also the father also passed away early, but there probably father lived on a little longer. He was working for the government, but he was ousted because of a number of reasons. One had to do with the fact that his family was put in a situation that made them more disadvantageous to be a member of that family, with political changes. And so he was ousted, and they say he may have become, he retreated into a kind of life of recluse, like a Buddhist monk. No, he never became a monk, probably, but he was not in Shinran's life when he was young. So mother certainly passed away young, and so it was not an easy situation. So Shinran and his brothers, he had 3 or 4 brothers. I think we just have to go with 4 brothers. So he was the oldest of the 5 boys, and he was adopted by one of his uncles. At the age of 9, all 5 of them were ordained as Buddhist monks. Can you imagine at the age of 9 being, sent to a monastery to become monks? There are many reasons people have given for why they were sent to become monks. One is that their life became more difficult to make a living, and the uncles thought it would be better for them to be in a monastery where they can get better education, and also their family situation made them put them in danger with the rival clan. So for a variety of reasons, Shinran was ordained at the age of 9 in 1181, I think it was. And then, so we all know that this was a period of much upheaval and transition. So he was born in 1173, but soon after, for another, a number of years, you have a host of difficulties like wars and earthquake, fire, and epidemic. And then we had a political transition in 1185 with the beginning of the Kamakura period, where we had a period in which the warriors or the samurais began to rule the country. And in light of this, in Buddhism, 1151, it was thought that the period of Mappo means the last age of Dharma. And this is a theory in Buddhism where it is believed that the quality of the practitioners and the teachings declined, and now we have entered a period where we no longer have people who are becoming enlightened or even practicing, but we have the teachings, and that teaching for Shinran and Honen was the Pure Land teaching. So in this time of decline, this is the best teaching. So that's how they push their teaching. Now, just I want to give you some pictographs of this is a map. If you ever been to Kyoto, this is the Kyoto station, and you have the Shinkansen, the bullet train going this way towards Osaka. And this area, Kyoto, is very small, only 15 kilometers from the station to the Mount Hiei where he practiced. So for those of you, just to give you a very, he was born in the Hino area from the Nishihonganji temple, let's say, 5 or 6 or 7 kilometers. And then at the age of 9, he was ordained at the Shoren Inn here at the age of 9. And then later he will move on to Mount Hiei, which is only, 15 kilometers from Honganji temples or the Kyoto station. So, so this is where he was born, ordained, and we cover the rest later. This is at the Hino, where the place of his birth, and there's a temple there, and you have the statue and a temple built there. Here is a photo or a illustration of his when he was young, where this is where he was ordained at the age of 9. And this is a wooden image of his father when he was, low-ranking aristocrat. And again, we don't know what really happened, but some say he lived long, but again, he was out of Shinran's life. Here is a picture of him getting ordained, and here his this one's easier to. Here upper right, here is a little Shinran, and they're ready to shave his head. And this is his teacher, Jian. Okay, so the last section of what I want to say, it has to do with all of us. The third theme was, reflecting on my life. And, I would like all of you to, as you reflected on Shinran's life, a life that when he was born and in early years were not very comfortable, probably much dukkha. And like for you to reflect on your life and and early childhood. In my case, have to move at the age of 10 suddenly from Japan to US, and my parents not getting along very well. It was kind of similar to Shinran, maybe not as bad, but it really impacted on how I was, or what really motivated me when I was young, and what motivated me to become to seek Buddhism. Now, so reflecting on your early childhood and your family situation and how that impacted, now please think about where you are now, here and now. And as we do that, we want to think about what is important. So as a reference, I wanted to share with you, which is well known, Hindu 4 aims of human life, Purusha Artha. And in their traditional view, they felt that there are 4 aims of life. One is Dharma. This Dharma is not mean teaching necessarily. This is more like the correct conduct, responsibility as a member of a society. So trying to do the right thing, carrying out the responsibilities, being moral. Artha is aspiring for wealth and success in society, more economic, I guess. So it's important, especially if you have a family, to care for the family and getting the right wealth. Kama and not karma. Okay, karma is different. Kama is pleasures. It can go from pleasures of food to sex to sports to beauty, you name it. Whatever that gives you a high is kama. And that is, they recognize that is also important. And the last one is moksha, liberation, the spiritual part, liberation or enlightenment. So from the Hindu standpoint, which one do you think they prioritized the most? They're all important, but what is most important? The answer is number 4, moksha, the religious, the spiritual. So I guess it's obvious because it's a Hindu worldview, but that is a position that I think Buddhists also share, and certainly something that I share. And so moksha is, I guess, another way is religion. And I mentioned Paul Tillich briefly. I like his definition of religion. Religion is a state of being grasped by an ultimate concern, a concern which qualifies all other concerns as preliminary. So all the others are preliminary, and which itself contains the answers to the question of the meaning of life. So religion is an ultimate concern that ultimately gives you the meaning of life. And so I'd like for all of you to think about that and to reflect this, the emphasis on religion or moksha or liberation. In another Hindu view of life, they thought that life cycle would be student life, household life, retired life, and renounced life. Being a student, raising a family is important, but in the end, the emphasis is placed on retired life, or you go out, live in the forest, and you contemplate on religion or meaning of life, and which is quite different from the modern, way lifestyle in contemporary Japan or US or Western Europe or Canada, where at the end of life you're supposed to enjoy life, go to golf and go on cruises, which are not bad. I want to do that too, but not just think about pleasures, but think about meaning of life and kind of focus more at the end of your life on what is the most important according to the traditional view. And so in Buddhism, I think that can be reflected in the three treasures that we recite often in the services. The three treasures are, of course, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And there are various translations of this, but here is one that I like, and it goes, hard is to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings. Now we hear them. If we do not realize awakening in this life, when will we ever realize it? Together with numerous beings, let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. So this kind of encapsulates, at least for me, how I feel at this moment in my life, is that I have been fortunate enough to raise a family and have gained a certain, accomplished certain things on a horizontal level. But I value the moksha, the liberation part of it, because I realize more and more that I'm reaching the end of this particular life, and I want to, bring it all together. And this saying really speaks to me. If we do not attain awakening in this life, when will we ever realize it? And the Buddha, in his final sermon, he left with this, aspiring, inspirational words. He said, make yourself the light. Make the teachings the life. So it's up to you. Buddhism is a first-person religion. It is not thinking about other people. I mean, obviously you think about other people, you care about others, but you have to work on yourself. And so make yourself the light, make the teachings, and that is so inspirational. And out of the mud grows the flower of awakening. And as you know, the theme, the symbol of Buddhism is the lotus, which grows out of the mud. The horizontal, the ups and downs, the life is a bumpy road, but we can find and realize awakening. And as the golden chain closes at the end, we say, may we all attain perfect peace. Okay, now.
Thank you. Thank you. And at this point, we have time for some questions. Again, please either speak up, unmute yourself, speak up, or you can use the little icon at the bottom to raise your hand, and Reverend Dr. Tanaka will acknowledge you.
Yeah, you would have to speak up because I cannot see all of the frames, so. Please don't be shy. There are no stupid questions.
Hi, Dr. Tanaka. Can I ask
Yes.
a question? Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Christopher.
Okay, Christopher, thank you.
Yes, thank you for your talk. The quote, the one that you read and mentioned, is feeling very pertinent to you in the latter stage of life about if we do not attain awakening in this life, when will we ever realize it? To me, that feels like a call to action, so I'm fairly new to study of Shin Buddhism, and I don't want to dive into that yet, maybe too much, I know, but
yeah,
what about the effort that's calling, the kind of, I must wake up now, that sense, and how that is practiced in terms of not relying too much on self-power.
Yeah, well, okay, well, as I will explain in my later classes, that effort is important, even in Shin. That's one of the things that I may differ from some of the traditional Shin people, because they often talk about just simply entrusting. But there's a process that as I mentioned, the parable is an attempt to provide a process that is important. And so, yeah, the effort is important. Self-effort and self-power are different. Self-power is what Shinran rejects, but self-effort, he does not reject. So we shouldn't get it confused. And so the urgency is now, we have to do it now. Someone has a radio on. Can you unmute yourself? Okay, so yeah, so urgency, a sense of urgency for those who feel it. I mean, there are a lot of people in the world who don't feel it, who only live on the horizontal, and they don't have any idea of what the vertical is. But once you get a taste of it, and you find it meaningful, then you have no choice but to try to walk that path. And I hope that you do, because I think it can give greater meaning and greater happiness. And not ending this particular life not knowing what this was all about. So that's what we call awakening. And awakening is not just one big event, or and we should not compare with others. Awakening of Buddha and awakening of Shinran and myself, we're all different. So there is a kind of awakening and realization that is appropriate for yourself. Okay, so Chris, I wonder if I answered your question, or
Yes, thank you very much.
yeah, okay,
yeah.
Good question. Anybody else, please?
Hey, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm Jen Connie. When you were at the Buddhist Study Center here in Honolulu, I saw you. You were great. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, good to hear. Good to
Okay.
welcome.
Yes.
Aloha.
Yes, I'm excited about this. I hope this isn't too silly a question.
No, there are no foolish questions.
Okay, so as I'm hoping, as we get deeper into this, I've been doing Buddhism practicing for a few years. What you just said about some people have no idea, like, of that vertical. They don't feel it. They don't get there.
Yeah.
But we have to deal with those people.
Yeah.
Like in work and wherever. But I'm just, is there something, I don't know, do you have something to speak to that along with what we're studying that's gonna.
Okay, when you say we have to deal with them,
Yeah.
what do you mean by that? I mean,
A lot. So a lot. Some of those people have a direct effect on your life.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So they're on that horizontal level. They're your friends, your workers, etc. And they're probably, from what you're saying, they don't think like you, and they have different values. Well, welcome to samsara. Welcome to samsara. That's the way it is. And actually wishing that they're not like that, that's your problem. That's your desire. And so what Buddha would say is to accept them for who they are, what they are, and deal, that's the first thing. So beyond that, you have a particular specific situation, but maybe what I just said can really enable you to kind of reduce your desire for people to be like you or think like you. You just have to accept the fact that there are all kinds of people in this world, and you have to see them objectively. And then you can tailor how you react to people like that. I mean, if you don't want to get upset, then remember the cliffhanger guy, and see that maybe you're hanging on to a cliff that you think is 100 yards below, but that it's not that bad. And then I think there are other techniques that you can employ to deal with people, for one, so that you don't get upset, and also to get along better with them. And I think you have to respect them too. I mean, the political situation that we have in the US is that not only are we divided, but we don't trust each other. And then that is a problem. And I think that way out of this is to try to understand them a little bit better. But there are certain people who are just totally, beyond the pale, and there's not very little you can do. And the best thing is to stay away from them. What I say often is that when you find yourself in a difficult situation, you have three options. One, you can leave. Two, you can accept the situation exactly the way it is. Or third, you can try to improve the situation. And usually it's the third option. And that's where, working on yourself, your values and techniques of how to deal with people. And there are people who know more about those techniques than I do. So that would be my answer. Is there more that you want to say, Jennifer?
I'm going to take the first one and leave. Mhm.
Oh, leave.
I have to change my employment. I'm terrified, but I cannot.
Oh, okay, good. Well, good. I thought you said you're going to leave this session.
No, I love this.
No. Okay. So please, yeah, that is an option. That is not a defeat for you, because in life, there are situations when you have to leave. There are bad situations. I can speak for myself. I went through those bad phases, and I'm glad that I left. Sometimes there's nothing you can do to make the situation better. Mm-hmm. So, and when you do leave, it's not a defeat for you, and that, please keep that in mind. Okay, so I hope, best wishes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we still have a few minutes. One last question.
Jim.
Yes, hello, Ken Sensei. Thank you very much. It's Jim Pollard.
Hi, Jim.
Thank you. Just a brief comment. The quotation you shared from the German scholar regarding Pure Land Buddhism and Shinran, I don't know the full context. He perhaps meant it as disparaging. So we might react by saying, well, his statement is incorrect.
Yeah.
That's one way of responding, I would suggest. Another way is to say, actually, his statement is correct, but it's not, should not be seen as disparaging. I think you'll probably get into this more in subsequent discussions, but Shinran, as I would put it, actually does turn our customary Buddhist values upside down.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And that there is some amount of truth to that. But given the context, it does say that Shin is a deviation. I think that's the message. But that's fine. I mean, but as we talked about earlier, the chapter 3 of the Tanisho, even a good person is saved, and how much more so in the evil person. That, I think that may be one example of what he was referred to as twisting into its opposite. And so, okay, so we'll definitely keep that, what you said, in mind. And maybe it's my reaction, self-defensive reaction, but I think we have to take note of the fact that there are many people who don't know Shin Buddhism to think that way. And in fact, there are many people who think Shin Buddhism is a popular religion, that there is, but I also point out to people like that Pure Land Buddhism has texts that go back 2,000 years in the Buddhist canons. So it has a strong foundation from basic Buddhism, monastic Buddhism. So I'm not offended by it. I just, here's one example of it. Or the Zen teacher who said, Shin Buddhism, you're a Christian Buddhist, but because, they haven't really taken the time to study. I want to mention to everybody else, this is Reverend Jim, who is also written a book. And at the bottom of the outline, I have some reference books, and he has written a very wonderful book on Shin Buddhism, and it's available online for very cheaply, and ebook. So okay, so Jim, you can now give me a.
Thank you, Ken Sensei. I have no ordination. I'm not a reverend, just to
Yeah.
clarify.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought you got first ordination. Oh, no? Oh, okay. Well, it doesn't matter. Good. Okay, sorry. I thought you had. Good. I thought when I went to Orange County, you were wearing a robe.
Minister's assistant robe.
Oh, I see.
That does not designate ordination.
Oh, okay.
Just to
That's
clarify.
why I thought you were ordained. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Reverend Kenneth Tanaka. This concludes our first class in the course. We hope you found it instructive and meaningful. You are reminded that a link to the questionnaire for the session was sent to you. It is not mandatory, but you're encouraged to respond to it, not only for the instructor, but to help you put your thoughts together and also to review the materials. The link will be sent to you again, and we'll include the link for the recording for this class as well. Now, for those interested in more discussions offline, you are cordially invited to join Dr. Tanaka and others for what we are calling Nirvana Hour, where you may bring your own wisdom water that may loosen any inhibitions you have to ask questions or speak your mind. The Nirvana Hour is strictly optional, so please don't feel obligated to join. For those joining, we're going to take a short little break and come back in 10 minutes from now. And for everyone else, we look forward to seeing you at the next session, which is going to be Sunday, March 13th or 14th, depending on where you live on the planet for most of you. And our next class, until our next class, please stay safe. Good night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, one thing about the hour for next time, due to the daylight savings time, people in Hawaii and Arizona and Japan, time will change. So it will be indicated. It has already been indicated. So please note that. The time will not change for the people in Canada and US. Okay, so thank you, and please take care and stay safe.
See you in 10 minutes for those who are staying for Nirvana Hour.
Well, I got my beer.
I have my wine. I guess we
come
can all
on.
unmute, right? We can all unmute.
Yeah.
I've got my wine.
All right. Jennifer, where are you? Jennifer from Hawaii? Are you there? No. Oh, I guess she left.
5 more minutes to the break.
Okay. Thanks, dudes, Anita, Igor, Alex. I'm glad the technology went really well. I mean, basically, we can have. Did you have? Well, we can talk about what improvements we can make, but it's a miracle. So I'll wait till we start. So, Alex, which background is that? Is that Kamakura or?
No, this is Nanzo Inn. It's near Fukuoka.
Oh.
Yeah. It's
near Fukuoka. What part of Fukuoka?
it's in the countryside to the it's to the east. Yeah, maybe half an hour train ride from the
I
city.
see.
Yeah.
It's in Sasaguri. I looked it up too because for our Dharma talk, we wanted an image of the reclining Buddha, which is not that common in Japan. But so I was interested to see that. Alexander, have you visited there?
Yeah, I went.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, maybe in maybe it was in November last year. Yeah.
How nice.
Yeah, it was lovely.
So, Bill, how are things in San Diego? Oh,
No, I'm sorry. My controls are a little slow.
Yeah.
Like my mind. We are still mourning the loss of Kenji Sensei. We're trying to get over it somehow.
Yeah.
But we are very grateful. His legacy is that he left a very strong ministerial assistant program.
Yeah.
So we have 3 ordained minister's assistants currently. I'm certified, and the rest, most of the rest are also working on certification. I don't see the entire range of people, but I know earlier Sharon Sasaki was with us. She also is a minister's assistant. So
I see.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I believe we need to turn off the recording.
Turn off. I did.
No, it says it's still recording.
Oh, really?
Yes.
My screen says recording.
I thought I